You are listening to Elderberry Croft, Seasons of the Heart, Part 9, September Longing, written and narrated by Becky Dowdy. September Longing, Chapter 1. Prudence sang her favorite Beatles song, the one she was named after, softly to herself as she rinsed her cereal bowl and teacup, and left them to drip dry on the already full bamboo dish drainer beside her sink. It was, in fact, a beautiful September day, and Prue moved quickly through her apartment, scooping up abandoned shoes and discarded scarves, her two favorite fashion accessories, as she straightened the place up. Carney was back from the road and would be here in an hour, and she had big ideas for how they were going to spend their day together. Things had felt a little stale lately, and while he'd been away, she'd thought a lot about their plans for the future. Could she see herself with him forever and ever? Could she live with the long absences his job demanded of him? What about Carney? Did he really want to spend the rest of his life with her? Could he accept her the way she was and not try to change her, not try to make her into something she wasn't? She was a fair bit older than Carney, long past childbearing years, but she never wanted to be a mother anyway. He hadn't mentioned having children, but neither had she asked him directly about it. What if that was why he still hadn't proposed after all these years? What if he was just keeping her around until he found a woman who would produce a brood of miniature Carneys? She grinned at the visual her mind drummed up, a room full of barrel-shaped, tattooed babies with hairy forearms. Ew, she giggled, scrunching up her nose at the thought. That's just wrong. Besides, she had Mumsy, whose condition had rendered her like a child for years now. Prue was glad she could give her mother the undivided attention she needed after the woman had dedicated so much of her own life to be there for Prudence. The phone rang, and she spent a few frantic moments digging through the loveseat cushions for the cordless handset. She hadn't bothered returning it to its stand after checking in with Mumsy first thing this morning, and by the time she found it, her cell phone was ringing instead. Carney. "Hey, you big stud. Excited to see me?" She dropped her voice to a sultry purr, knowing it would make him smile self-consciously wherever he was. "Hey, yourself, doll. Actually, I'm running late." He sounded distracted, tense. "Can we do this after lunch?" "Is everything all right? What's the holdup?" "Do this?" He made it sound like an oil change or a trip to the dry cleaners. He'd been driving for 10 days, and it had been even longer since they'd seen each other. Mumsy's Alzheimer's was getting significantly worse, and 2 days before Carney left, the poor dear fell and ended up in the hospital with a broken arm. "I need to update my medical card, that's all. I just got here and the doc's already half an hour behind. Nurse Ratched just informed me I have to do a full lab workup this time, too." Carney's conversational skills left much to be desired, especially on the phone, but Prue usually liked filling in the spaces around his terse sentences. They made a good couple that way. She loved to talk, and he preferred to listen. For Carney to call anyone names, especially in reference to the awful nurse in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Prue knew he wasn't happy. "Why did you have to schedule a doctor's appointment for today?" she asked, keeping her voice level, her tone guarded. "I took the whole day off to spend with you." "They opened at 8. I planned on being out of here by 9. She glanced at the heavily scrolled clock that doubled as wall art over her loveseat. It was 10 after 9 already. "Can you do your lab work another time? Tomorrow morning, maybe?" "I'm not subjecting myself to this nut house 2 days in a row unless I have a gun to my head. I'm here. I'm gonna get it all done now." It made sense. Really, it did. The facility the trucking company used was about 30 miles away from Carney's place, and having just arrived back from a cross-country delivery that included a breakdown in Pennsylvania, She couldn't blame him for not wanting to drive any more than he had to while he was off. But they'd been together so long now, and Prue could tell there was something else, something he wasn't saying. He wasn't normally a rude man, although she knew some people mistook his taciturnity as such. Even if things didn't go the way he wanted, he'd spent enough hours behind the wheel of his big rig in stop-and-go traffic that he usually had the patience of a saint. So what was up with him today that he was so out of sorts? She didn't bother asking. If he didn't want to tell her what was on his mind, her pushing him to talk never worked to her benefit. "Okay," she replied, no longer bothering to keep the disappointment out of her voice. Dropping down on the coffee-colored couch, she propped her feet up on a padded footstool and sighed loudly. "Look, if I'm out of here in time for lunch, I'll call, okay?" His voice was gruff, the way it always sounded when he knew he'd let her down. She stuck out her bottom lip, her eyebrows drawing together in a scowl. She was feeling childish, and she was glad no one could see her pouting. "I'm starving, but they won't let me eat until after the vampires get to me." "You didn't eat any breakfast?" How often had she chided him about making the first meal of the day the most important one? No wonder he was grumpy. She didn't know any man who could handle going without breakfast for very long. "Figured I was on my way to some of your home cooking, saving my appetite." The smile crept back across her face. She did love to cook for him, mainly because he was so appreciative. "Okay, I'll have something yummy ready and waiting. And Carney?" "I'm sorry this morning isn't going well for you, but I'm really excited to see you again, no matter what time of day it is." "Yeah, me too. I'll call you as soon as I'm done." He hung up before she could ask him for clarification. Was he sorry the morning was shot, or excited to see her, too? Now that she had extra time on her hands, Prue decided she didn't feel like hanging out by herself. She could go sit with Mumsy, but she knew a morning visit would upset her mother's routine. And besides, Prue wanted to be close to home in case Carney finished up earlier than he was predicting. She puttered around the house a little longer, put the drainer full of dishes away, straightened up her Tarzan and Jane-inspired bedroom, and made certain all her cupboard and closet doors were closed. She had way too many articles of clothing for one woman, but she could pretend leopard print and zebra stripe fabric wasn't an addiction when she didn't have to look at it spilling out onto the floor of every room. She sat at the window seat, legs crisscrossed beneath her, and stared out the window toward the driveway that ran between Edith and Al's places, as though wishful thinking would make Carney appear in his orange El Camino. "This won't do," she declared out loud, pushing up off the cushioned bench. She stood, both hands on her curvaceous hips, and scanned the room for ideas. On the coffee table, filled with a pretty display of smooth river rocks, cloudy blue and green sea glass, and candles, was the rectangular twig basket Willow Goodhope had brought by over a month ago. It had been filled with all kinds of goodies, a rosemary and mint-scented lotion that made her skin tingle pleasantly, a bag of loose fragrant tea made from some kind of berries and tiny white flowers, a tea ball, and 2 mugs. There was also a lavender and rose petal pillow for Mumsy. Prue had mentioned to Willow one day out near the mailboxes that Mumsy suffered from headaches and had trouble sleeping. The pillow, along with a tiny blue glass jar of salve called Sweet Dreams, was packaged together in a mesh bag with instructions for use. Rub a tiny bit of Sweet Dreams into Mumsy's temples in the evening. Not only is your touch soothing, but the calming herbs and oils will help settle her nerves. Prue didn't know if all that Earth Girl stuff was real or not, but over the last month, Mumsy seemed to fall asleep much easier after their evening visits. The day really was beautiful, the morning still young, and sharing an hour or so with the enigmatic Willow Goodhope suddenly sounded like just the way she wanted to spend it. She scooped up her phone and dialed Willow's number. September Longing, Chapter 2. Prue and Willow bumped into each other often at the row of mailboxes that ran along one side of the coach house trailer park driveway, and more than once they'd promised to get together for a meal, coffee, even a dinner out. Time, however, kept marching by, and there always seemed to be a scheduling conflict for one or the other of them. So when Willow exuberantly agreed to make her way across the bridge to Prue's apartment, Prue was thrilled. "I brought scones," Willow declared, holding up a covered platter in one hand and a jar of garnet-colored fruit in the other. "You must try my elderberry jam. If you like it, there's more where that came from. I've harvested so many elderberries over the last 2 months, it's all I can do to keep up." She gave Prue a one-armed hug and bustled in, dropping her slouchy shoulder bag on the floor near the end of the couch. "It's September, and my little tree is still making fruit." The jam and scones she set on the kitchen counter, the stretch of formica already comfortably cluttered with various mismatched kitchen appliances, a set of glass canisters, and a miscellany of other things, including notepads and pens, a bowl of pennies, and a box of tissue. "I just put on a fresh pot of coffee, but should we have tea with our scones instead?" "Coffee's perfect for me," Willow said, spinning slowly to take in the apartment. "Oh, Prue, your place is so you. I love the animal print and jewel tones, those big floor cushions. And look, you have a beanbag." She crossed the room and flopped down onto the big red leather bag of tiny styrofoam beads, spreading her arms wide. "I love beanbags." She fluttered her fingers at the alcove across the room. "And the way you have everything set up so the window is a focal point? You inspire me, Prudence Merriweather." Prue beamed. She loved the way it felt in here, too, but she knew there weren't many who approved of her style. Too flamboyant, too wild, too young for her 58 years. But it was exactly the way she wanted it. "Thank you. It is me, isn't it?" She picked up the plate of scones and carried it to a sturdy little table with 2 chairs in front of the window where she'd planned to share her mid-morning coffee with Carney. "I love that I can see all the comings and goings of this place through this window. You can't get in or out of here without me knowing," she chuckled. "At least when I'm here, anyway." Within minutes, they were settled into the conversation of long-time friends, moving past the first official visit awkwardness before they knew it. Willow sat cross-legged on the cushioned seat, her back soaking up the warmth from the sun through the window, and Prue settled in one of the chairs, her feet propped up on the bench beside Willow. "I hear Shelley Little over at the other end of the park is spending a lot of time with our Eddie," Prue remarked, leaning forward, coffee cup in both hands. She drank it strong and creamy and sweet, while Willow took hers black. "Oh, yes, I love that the two of them have discovered each other. And the fact that they've lived next door to each other for so long already takes some of the pressure off them hurrying things along." Willow's eyes sparkled. "A remarkable girl was hiding out over there, Prue. Shelley's blossoming under Eddie's attention." Willow's voice was pure whimsy, Prue decided, rich and husky but entirely feminine. Listening to her talk was like lying on her back in the middle of a stand of aspens on a blustery Colorado morning. Prue smiled to herself. She hadn't thought of that early childhood memory in a long time. She'd spent the first 9 years of her life in a tiny home in the shadow of the Rockies. Her father, a quiet, reserved man she remembered mostly by his photographs and her mother's undying love for him, worked for the railroad and was gone more often than he was home. Mumsy adored John Lennon and the Beatles, and each morning her mother got her out of bed by singing Dear Prudence to her. They'd go running through the woods, following animal trails and catching lightning bugs, sharing picnics in their favorite clearing, and listening to the wind swirling and twirling through the leaves of the white-barked aspen trees. Even when the sun wasn't up and the sky wasn't blue, Mumsy insisted that Prue was beautiful like the song said, and to this day the two of them still sang it together over the phone each morning. "You remind me of," Prue blurted out, "of trees." Willow's eyebrows arched prettily. "Oh, as in willow trees?" Prue snorted. "No, that would be too cliché even for me. Aspens. Mumsy and I used to spend hours listening to the wind in the aspens, and the way you talk, I don't know, something about your voice reminds me of that sound." She reached for a second scone and slathered it with elderberry jam. "Aspens, Willow's smile showed all her teeth. "I take it you didn't grow up around here." "Colorado. My father worked for the railroad. We lived in a little house in the middle of nowhere, but that was just fine with us. My mother taught me at home, back in the days when homeschooling was frowned on. When my father was killed in a train derailment, we moved out here to be close to her sister, and we've lived here ever since. My goodness, but those were precious years to me." Prue closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to recall the way the arid woods smelled, the spicy aroma of mountain air. "I grew up in the woods, too," Willow offered, and Prue opened her eyes, nodding encouragingly, wanting to know more about her. "Up in Oregon. My mom and I traipsed around like forest children, too. That's where I first learned about elderberries. The trees grew wild where we lived, and she taught me how every part of the tree was good for something, even if it was just for entertainment. Do you know Ivan Davis from Space Number 10? "I don't know that I've ever met Ivan, but I know Patty and Richard. At least Patty. Richard doesn't get out much, does he?" "Not really. But Joe next door is helping Patty put in a fall garden in the Davises' little yard this year, and Richard's often outside on the porch keeping them company. You should wander over there some day. I know they'd both enjoy getting to know you. And Ivan, you two would get a kick out of each other. Anyway, I've taught him how to make clappers and whistles with the elderberry branches. You should see him. He's like a kid with new toys. I don't know if Patty and Richard are happy to have him around more or not, with all the noise he makes whenever he visits." Willow laughed loudly, a sound that startled Prue. Her coffee sloshed with her sudden movement, but fortunately, it all stayed in the cup. Prue chuckled good-naturedly. "My goodness, Willow Goodhope, that's quite the noise you make." She didn't mean her words to sound ugly, and the minute they were out, she regretted them. But Willow laughed again, the riotous sound bouncing around the room like a pinball machine. "I know, isn't it terrible?" she hiccuped. "My mother used to laugh like that, too. I don't mind it because it makes me feel like she's still with me." She pressed a hand over her heart. "In here. And when I laugh, a little bit of her comes bursting out of me." "I don't think it's terrible, honey. I think it's wonderful. Besides, I sorta like a little brass, can't you tell?" Prue fluffed the fat, freshly darkened curls floating around her face and batted her long-lashed eyes. "Give me bold any day. Lets people know where you stand. None of this subtle nuance stuff for me, thank you very much." A movement out the window caught her eye. "Oh, look. Speaking of Joe, there he goes with that wife of his out for their morning walk. I love that he's finally come out of the closet about her." Willow peered over her shoulder briefly, patted her hand over her heart, and sighed dreamily. "It's so romantic. And she's gorgeous, isn't she?" "Oh, my goodness, yes. You know, when I admitted to her that I've always wanted to learn how to do those intricate hair weaves like she wears, she promised to bring her daughter out for a visit. Between the two of them, she claims they'll have me weaving like a pro in no time. Isn't that the sweetest thing?" Prue set her cup down and pointed at Willow's hair. "And you, Willow Goodhope, oh my word, what I wouldn't give to have your hair." She reached over and snagged one of Willow's curls, pulling it out straight, then releasing the corkscrew to watch it bounce back into its insistent spiral. "Do you ever straighten it? It must look like a copper waterfall hanging down your back." Prue was taken aback when Willow blanched noticeably. "I used to wear it straight all the time, but it's too much work." Her voice sounded less like the wind dancing with aspen leaves and more like the stillness before a storm. "Oh." Prue wasn't sure how to respond, but she was rescued by the approach of a shiny silver car turning into the coach house trailer park driveway. She'd seen it only once before, about a week ago when the car pulled up in front of Al's place. She'd watched, curious to see who was paying the quiet man in space number 4 a visit, but the driver never got out. Al walked down and met him at the car window. They exchanged what appeared to be files or manila envelopes. Then Al headed back inside. Instead of turning around in the drive in front of the main building, though, the car headed over the bridge toward the back of the property. She hadn't seen it come out again, so she assumed the car had gone all the way around and left by the driveway at the opposite end of the park. Now the same silver car was here, pulling up in front of Al's again, and this time the driver's door opened. "Oh my," Prue murmured appreciatively. "What have we here?" Willow turned to look out the window, then stood so abruptly she almost lost her balance. "Willow, what's wrong?" September Longing, Chapter 3. "I need to go," Willow stated, her voice high and tight. "Wait, I probably better stay, or he might see me, but I need to get out of the window." She was jabbering almost more to herself than to Prue. "What's wrong, honey?" Prue asked again, standing up and taking Willow by the shoulders to steady her. "Do you know that guy?" Prue watched him from the corner of her eye, appreciating everything about him, from the way he carried himself with casual elegance to the purpose in his stride as he made his way up the 3 steps to Al's small porch. His dark hair, although combed neatly, was a little long, curling ends brushing his collar. He wore a suit, but when he climbed from the car, he slipped out of the jacket and left it draped over his steering wheel. Although his pale blue shirt pulled snugly across his broad shoulders, he seemed long and lean to her. He was almost as tall as Carney, but his opposite in every other way. She couldn't see his face, but at the moment, she was busy taking in the rest of him and didn't really mind. Besides, if Willow's response was any indication, it was probably better that the man was walking in the opposite direction. "I know him, yes, but I don't want to see him, or be seen by him." Well, that cleared nothing up. "Who is he?" Willow answered curtly. "He's a lawyer." "A lawyer? What does Al need a lawyer for?" This was getting curiouser and curiouser, as the Cheshire Cat would say. "And how do you know him?" Willow slipped out of Prue's grasp and crossed the room to the kitchen. Leaning against the counter, she faced the window, but stayed out of sight of Al's sliding glass door. Her eyes were shadowed with something that looked like sadness. Prue tried a different tactic. "Should I be worried for Al?" "No, no." Willow shook her head, her red curls bouncing vehemently. "He's here to help Al, not hurt him." As Prue gathered up the plate of scones and jam and brought them to the kitchen, the girl continued. "He's my ex, or he will be. He's my husband." If she'd said the gorgeous man was an alien, Prue would have been less surprised. She'd heard the rumors that Willow was married, but she'd thought they were just that, rumors. No man in his right mind would walk away from the ethereal beauty who'd christened her little cottage Elderberry Croft. From Prue's experience, Willow was just as lovely on the inside as she was on the outside. It simply didn't make sense. Wait. Prue raised an arm toward the window and pointed at Al's place, putting two and two together. Is that guy Shadow Man? First, Eddie had come by, warning her to lock her doors at night, to keep an eye out for a loiterer, and to call him if she saw anything suspicious. Then Kathy and Myra both made a point to stop by and fill her in on the whole Shadow Man situation. Kathy's spin on things was much less dramatic than Myra's, but the bottom line was the same as Eddie's. The man wasn't welcome. Have you called to let Eddie know he's here, or the police? Willow shook her head. No, it's okay. He's here because I asked him to come. What? Prue was getting confused. Then she remembered the way the silver car had headed toward the back of the property the last time she'd seen it. Has he been by to see you? Is he bothering you? No. Sometimes he drives by my place when he comes to see Al, Willow acknowledged, as though reading her mind. But he knows better than to stop. Prue frowned. So, let me get this straight. He's here because you invited him to come, but you don't want to see him? When Willow didn't answer right away, Prue tried again. Willow, honey, I'm concerned. Are you afraid of him? Did he hurt you? Is he dangerous? She didn't like that the younger woman looked so pale, hands trembling, eyes wide. No, Willow assured her, waving both hands briefly in a negative gesture. It's not like that. He just doesn't want to take no for an answer, and it's the only answer I can give him right now. So it's better if we steer clear of each other altogether. Her voice faded away on the last words. This was bad. This was very bad. It was plain to see that Willow was deeply affected by the man who'd just slipped into Al's place, that his presence completely undid her. But why? The phone rang, startling them both. Carney. She'd almost forgotten about him in the unfolding drama. I'm finished. I should be there in half an hour. Straight to the point. That was her Carney. Sounds good. Are you hungry? Starving. For lunch and for you. Oh, Carney, you're so sweet. She grinned broadly, suddenly anxious to see him again. She eyed Willow as she hung up. You haven't met Carney, have you? No, I haven't had the privilege. The girl headed over to pick up her floppy handbag from the end of the couch. But it sounds like he's on his way, so I'd better get out of your hair. You two don't need me around for your reunion. Willow's expressive green eyes were too bright. Prue put a hand on the girl's arm. I'm worried about you, Willow. You don't look so good. Why don't you wait until Carney gets here? We'll walk you home, and you'll get to meet my man. Willow stood indecisively for a moment or two, so Prue pushed a little harder. Look, your that guy won't try to stop you if you're on Carney's arm. He's the size of a mountain, and even though he's really just a big teddy bear, he looks pretty threatening. She poured them both another cup of coffee and handed Willow hers. Please stay. Besides, if you wait, maybe he'll leave and you won't have to worry about him seeing you at all. Finally, Willow nodded and sat down slowly on the edge of the love seat. I'm sorry, she said. What a terrible way to thank you for your hospitality. Don't be silly. Truth be told, I thrive on this kind of thing, although I know it's at your expense. Prue winked at the girl, trying to help her relax. Nothing exciting ever happened here before you moved in, Willow Goodhope. I didn't used to mind never being around, but now I feel left out because I'm missing parties and cookouts and prowlers. Willow grinned, her expression impish. Ha! I moved here to avoid excitement, not stir it up. She shot a glance out the window. I had no intention of him ever showing up here. But now, he's here because I asked him. She shrugged in resignation. I suppose it was inevitable. Prue studied her, not quite sure how to respond to that. Was it inevitable that the husband would be here, or that Willow herself would be the one inviting him? What had gone wrong in the Good Hope marriage that had this usually vivacious girl so shaken up? She desperately wanted the scoop, but her years of studying clients' faces in the beauty parlor mirror had taught her that comfort, not confrontation, opened mouths. She'd have to do what she did best, talk about hair. Well, regardless of that man over there, I doubt you could go anywhere and not cause a stir with hair like yours. I have clients who would sell their firstborn for all those glorious curls. Willow absent-mindedly combed her fingers through the curls that tumbled around her shoulders, but Prue's words didn't seem to bring comfort. In fact, what she saw in Willow's eyes looked more like pain, stark and haunting, a stillness that seemed to seep out of every pore, filling the room with something Prue couldn't articulate. I'm sorry. I don't know what I said. She scrambled for words, but Willow shook her head, silencing Prue's stutters. Stop. It's okay. Color was starting to leach back into Willow's face. Just having Christian, my husband, around has me on edge. I'm overreacting to everything. I'm sorry. Prue's stomach still twisted sympathetically over whatever Willow was dealing with, but she smiled, relieved. You don't have to apologize, honey. I don't know what's happened with you two, but it's obviously terrible. Once she got started, the words kept tumbling out. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. I like gossip just as much as the next girl, but I do know how to keep my mouth shut when it counts. Thank you. I'm glad. Willow sipped her coffee and Prue stayed quiet, hoping she would continue, but she changed the subject instead. You know what, Prue? I could really use a trim. She swept all her hair forward over her right shoulder, lifting a handful to examine the ends. I don't cut my hair as often as I should, but usually by the end of the summer, the ends are dry and need a little TLC. I've never been to your salon before. I'll make an appointment to come see you sometime soon, maybe later this week. Would that be okay? Don't be silly. You don't have to come see me there. We can trim it right here. Let me grab my scissors. Although disappointed that Willow wasn't going to open up, Prue was relieved to have something to do, something she was good at. She hurried into the surprisingly large bathroom. It was one of the things that had sold her on the apartment back when she'd first looked at it. The stream was charming, the bay window a promising element, but the huge bathroom with its clawfoot tub, expansive vanity, and the bank of cabinets and shelves along the back wall had sealed the deal for her. A window of vintage glass blocks above the shelves let in natural light, making the room feel spacious and airy. She'd hung a pink-jeweled chandelier over the bathtub to read by, and the double curtains encircling the tub and goosenecked showerhead boasted an array of pink and black high-heeled shoes and handbags. Plush pink throw rugs lay scattered across the ugly linoleum floor. She suspected there was gorgeous hardwood beneath the checkered plastic sheeting, and if she owned the place, she'd expose it in a heartbeat. But in spite of the dated flooring, she'd made the place work beautifully. This was a chick's bathroom all the way. Poor Carney. Although he never said so, she knew he felt uncomfortable using it. The thought of the tattooed bear of a man standing in the middle of her makeup-strewn, fuzzy pink and leopard print, perfume and hairspray-scented powder room always made her giggle. "Oh, Carney," she murmured, "how will we ever make this work, you and me?" Thoughts of him had her checking the ornately framed mirror over the sink, but determining she still looked her best, she returned to the kitchen with her salon kit. She had Willow move to a stool, draped her shoulders with a turquoise nylon cape, then handed her a large hand mirror with a long handle. Standing behind her, she asked, "Do you just want the ends trimmed, or would you like me to take a little length off?" "Just the ends, please. My husband loves it long." The moment the words were out, Willow's hand flew up to cover her mouth. A silence like a stirring lion settled between them, and Prue wanted to shake the girl, awake the lion, and get things out on the table once and for all. It was blatantly clear that Willow was in need of a set of shoulders to lean on, to cry on, to unload on, and Prue wanted to be that set of shoulders. "Then we'll keep it long. Chin down," Prue instructed, lifting a section of the red curls. One by one, she separated a corkscrew and snipped off a half-inch or so. "We're doing this dry. It's called dusting. You already have a great cut, so I'm keeping the shape the same, just getting rid of the dry ends where it's needed, okay?" Willow nodded, and as Prue worked her way methodically through her hair, she saw the girl's shoulders begin to relax. Finally, Willow spoke without preamble. "I suppose, no matter what happens, part of me will always think of him as my husband." Prue murmured encouragingly. The salon magic was working. Willow rested the handheld mirror face down on her lap and closed her eyes. Prue ran her fingers through the red curls, gently massaging Willow's scalp. The girl took a deep breath and opened her mouth to continue. A sharp knocking interrupted the moment, and Willow flinched like she'd been struck. Her shoulders went up, her back straight, and she stared wide-eyed at the door. September Longing, Chapter 4. "It's just Carney. That's his car parked out front, see?" Prue pointed at the long hood of the El Camino visible at the edge of the bay window. "He always parks right there so I can see it's him. He doesn't like that I don't have a peephole or a window by the front door, and he's always warning me about opening it without knowing who's on the other side." "Sounds like a good guy." "He's a great guy." Prue fluffed her hair and twirled once in front of Willow. "How do I look?" Willow grinned, her posture relaxing a little, and gave her 2 thumbs up. Prue pulled open the door and launched herself at the man who stood there. His arms encircled her, pulling her up against his stocky frame, crushing her to him. This was what she'd missed the most, being surrounded by Carney. "Hey, doll." His voice was gruff against her ear. "Hey, you big stud." She reached up and cupped his face in her long-fingered hands. "Kiss me and tell me you missed me." As he came up for air, he noticed Willow sitting in the kitchen, and Prue felt his whole body tense. She turned slowly, trying to gauge his reaction, then introduced them. "Carney, Willow. Willow, Carney." Carney dropped his arms from around her waist and stepped back from their intimate embrace. "Nice to meet you, Willow." His voice was still gruff, but Prue thought it was more from embarrassment than passion. He was rather conservative, not prone to demonstrate his affection publicly. His eyes darted back and forth between the 2 women before landing on Prue, his brows raised in question. "I invited Willow over for coffee this morning. She brought scones and jam to die for, and I supplied the coffee and scissors." Prue winked at Willow, who seemed uncertain of how she should respond. "I apologize for interrupting. I can come back." Carney took another step back. "Please," said Willow, standing quickly. "You're not interrupting. I was just keeping Prue company until you arrived." She reached up to release the cape from around her neck. "Don't be silly, Willow. Sit," Prue commanded. Grabbing Carney's hand, she laced her fingers with his and pulled him bodily inside. "Come in, honey. You're letting the air conditioning out." Indicating another stool tucked up to the counter, she told him to sit too. "And have a scone. You won't be sorry. Coffee?" "Of course," he replied, letting her push him down onto the seat only a few feet from where Willow sat. He took the mug of black coffee she handed him. "Look," Prue declared, "you two already have something in common. You both like your coffee black. There must be something to that." Carney studied them both while methodically slathering butter and jam on the largest scone from the platter Prue placed on the counter nearby. Prue went back to snipping, but she in turn watched curiously as Carney adjusted to the presence of the beauty in the room between them. After a few moments of silence, Prue spoke. "So, what did your doctor say?" She assumed it would be clear who the question was aimed at, but neither one responded. "Carney, did you get your medical card renewed?" "Who, me?" He straightened in his seat and took a gulp of coffee to wash down the huge bite he'd just taken. "Yes, you." Obviously, the man was still distracted, but Prue wondered if it was for the same reason that he'd been distracted on the phone this morning, or if perhaps it might be Willow now instead. "Nah, they have to wait for my lab results." He held up a tree-trunk arm to show off the cotton ball held in place at the crook of his elbow by a strip of medical tape. "They all but drained me this morning, and that was after the juvenile delinquent stabbed me 3 times. Come on, how hard can it be to find one of these puppies?" He flexed uncharacteristically, and the crisscrossing blue lines running the length of his forearm popped out as they began to fill with blood. It was Prue's turn to raise her eyebrows. "Wow, you've got great veins, Carney." Willow's exclamation seemed just as out of character as Carney showing off his muscles. "My dad became a phlebotomist later in life, and he used to point out great veins to me all the time, in public. We got some weird looks, I'm telling you, especially with this vampire craze the last several years." She snickered. "He's in a retirement center, and the women he dates all have great veins." Carney laughed out loud. Out loud! Prue almost dropped her scissors. "Well, the next time I need my blood drawn, I'm bringing your dad in with me. The kid was having a worse time than I was, though. By the 3rd jab, he was sweating like a racehorse and looked like he might cry before I did." "Really? I wouldn't think a few pokes would be a problem for you, not with all those tattoos." Willow waved the mirror in his direction, her smile teasing. "Isn't that what it's like to get one of those things? And you're covered in them." As Prue worked quietly and watched her gorgeous neighbor interact with her beloved boyfriend, a sinking feeling began to settle in the pit of her stomach. "I got these when I was a lot younger, Willow." Carney tapped one forearm. "Pain doesn't register for a 25-year-old the way it does for a 55-year-old. Isn't that right, Prue?" Prudence's mouth fell open at his insensitive remark. Why would he highlight the difference in age between her and Willow? "I wouldn't know, dear. I'm still enjoying my 30s, she retorted, trying to keep her voice light and airy. Willow laughed out loud, a guffaw that filled the room and brought out another grin on Carney's face. "Oh, Prue," she exclaimed, "that's why I feel so comfortable around you. You're so confident, so sure of yourself. I wish I were like you." "Like me, an old maid?" "If you're an old maid, I'm Rumpelstiltskin," Willow chortled. "Well, you have the right color hair," Carney quipped. "But I don't suppose you're the type to steal people's children from them." Willow's expression sobered instantly, but she replied without hesitation, "No, that I wouldn't do. Not to anyone. Not for anything." Prue rolled her eyes at Carney, knowing Willow couldn't see her. Carney did, though. His shoulders went up as if to ask, "What did I do?" It was time for Prue to intervene and rescue them all. So the reason I made Willow stick around wasn't so she could witness you flexing and pointing out how old I am. We have a favor." Prue kept snipping. The girl had so much hair. "What's up?" Carney got up to refill his coffee and loaded up another scone with elderberry jam. Prue stayed silent, waiting for Willow to explain. "Well, it's a long story. I don't quite know where to begin." She paused, peering down at her reflection in the mirror in her hand. "I'm married, I guess." "You guess?" Carney paused mid-bite. "No, I don't guess. I know I am, but I don't want him here. I moved here because we're separated, but now he's here, at my invitation." She glanced out the bay window, and Carney followed her gaze with his own. Then he turned to look up at Prue for clarification. She laughed at the confusion in his eyes. "Look, Carney, the guy is over at Al's right now. Willow just needs to get home without being seen by him. She doesn't want any trouble, but if she heads out the front door alone, he might try to catch up with her. We need you to walk her home. You're intimidating until you start talking, but he probably won't brave getting that far." Prue threaded her fingers through the length of Willow's hair and shook out the ends, crescents of cut curls falling to the floor around her. "All done." "So what do you want me to do if he doesn't think I'm as scary as you do?" Carney didn't look very pleased with the mission at hand. "Shall I put him in a headlock? What's he doing over at Al's anyway?" Willow stood up after Prue slipped the cape from around her shoulders. She pursed her lips, clearly hesitant to explain. "He's an attorney. He's helping Al deal with some legal issues." "You want me to rough up a lawyer?" Carney looked appalled. He stood up and went to the window to stare at the trailer in space number 4 across the way. "Is that his fancy car out there?" "Yes, that's his fancy car," Willow acknowledged. "Wait." Prue paused, dustpan in hand. "Didn't he have a big truck before? Isn't that what Eddie warned us to watch for?" She made quick work of the snipped hair on the floor. Even her broom had a leopard and hibiscus-patterned handle. "Yes, he used to have a truck. He sold it because I told him to." Carney turned around so his back was to the window and crossed his arms over his broad chest. "Are you telling me this guy is the stalker, Shadow Man?" His eyes narrowed at Willow. "Little lady, I'm all for helping a dame in distress, but I think I need a few more facts before you loop me into whatever it is you got going on here." When she didn't immediately respond, he continued. "You don't have to give me your life story, but I need something more to chew on." September Longing, Chapter 5. Prue watched Willow in silence, holding her breath, waiting. Carney had asked the questions she hadn't dared put to words. Would the girl open up? "You're right," Willow finally said, her words soft but not timid. "I shouldn't involve any of you in this stuff. This is between me and Christian and God, and really no one else can solve it." "You're right," she said again. "I'm so sorry." She reached for her purse again. "What do I owe you for the trim, Prue?" Prue snorted. "I don't want your money, Willow. I want your trust, your friendship." She crossed over to stand in front of Willow. "I've wanted to be your friend since I first saw you twirling your way to the mailbox. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to offer, honey, but from what I can see, you need a friend, maybe even worse than I do." She reached out and patted Willow's cheek. "Thank you, Prue. You don't know how much that means to me." Willow smiled softly, sadly. "I just can't. I can't talk about all this. I'm sorry." She slipped the wide strap of her bag over her shoulder and pointed at the platter that still held a few scones. "The jam is yours, and the rest of those scones. I'm so glad you liked them." Carney moved quickly for a big man. He crossed the room and stepped between Willow and the front door. "I can't let you go like this. Is the guy dangerous?" Willow laughed out loud, but this time the sound was harsh, like dead reeds rattling along a dry creek bed. "He's only dangerous to me, Carney." "That doesn't make me feel any better." Carney didn't budge, his large body effectively blocking her exit. Prue came over to stand beside him. "Willow, please, let us help you." Willow studied them both in silence, pressing her full lips together as though trying to keep the words from slipping out. Finally, she nodded, ever so slightly. "I promised Christian I'd not talk about our trouble without him being here to defend himself. But I can tell you this." She turned and made her way to the window that faced Al's place, lifting a hand to press it to the pane. Prue brought her fingertips to her lips at the tragic expression on Willow's face. "I can't be with him. I love him. I love him. Her voice caught, and she finished in a broken sob as the man in question stepped onto the front porch of Al's trailer, still talking to Al, who came out behind him. The older man was nodding solemnly, but he wore a slight smile. "I love him, but I can't be with him," she whimpered. "It hurts too much." At that moment, Christian turned, and like a magnet, his eyes were drawn to the window that framed Willow. "Oh my," Prue murmured, the longing in the young man's eyes a tangible force, even from 50 yards away. He took 2 halting steps across the porch, then stopped, his gaze never faltering. Al stared down at his shoes. Prue was sure the look in Christian's eyes was mirrored in Willow's, and if she knew Al at all, the man wouldn't be comfortable with that kind of raw emotion. Prue grabbed Carney's hand and pulled him across the room to where Willow stood, her hand still on the window, as though glued to that spot. Tears rolled unhindered from the corners of her unblinking eyes. Prue didn't care any more about knowing all the answers. It was devastatingly clear that Willow's pain was real, that Christian's was too, and neither one of them knew how to build a bridge over the chasm of suffering between them. Carney reached up and laid an arm across Willow's shoulders, tucking her into his side, and Prue, on her other side, slipped an arm around the girl's waist. Prue watched Christian's expression shift, his eyes take in the scene, first glancing at her, then over at Carney, then back to Willow. Carney stared hard at the man, but his face was an expressionless mask. Prue wondered what he was thinking at the moment, what he was communicating to Christian, man to man. Then, together, they drew Willow away from the window. "I need to go home," she whispered, her husky voice breaking Prue's heart. "I'd appreciate it so much if you'd walk with me, but I understand if you can't." Then it hit her. Willow needed them, their friendship, and the best way they could give it to her was by giving her their trust. It was exactly what Prue had asked of Willow, and the girl had been as honest as she could be with them, while still staying true to her promise to the man she loved. "I love him. It hurts too much." Carney was clearly feeling the same way. He gave the girl's shoulders a quick squeeze, then stood with his back to the door again. "We'll walk you home, Willow. We'll let him know you're not alone, that you're being looked out for. But I need to say something before we do." Prue looked up at him, her arm still around Willow's waist, curious at what Carney felt compelled to say. He'd been remarkably effusive, at least for him, in Willow Goodhope's company. "I'm a man." He paused long enough that Prue snickered. "I think we know that, Carney." Willow hiccuped. "I'm a man," he began again, and Prue thought he might be blushing. "I'm not all emotional and stuff, not like you women." She rolled her eyes. She'd known him to shed a tear or two during certain movies, especially those starring loyal but doomed animals. But I saw that man's face. He shook his head and glanced toward the window over the women's heads. Prue peered over her shoulder, too, and watched Christian reach out to shake Al's hand before making his way down the steps toward his car. That's not the face of a man who wants to hurt you. Willow nodded. I know. You two can't go on like this. I know. You're going to have to talk to him. I know. How long has it been since the two of you sat down together? Prue interjected. Willow didn't look at her. Since Christmas. It was the worst Christmas of my life. She sounded like a lost little girl. Oh, honey. Prue put her other arm around Willow and hugged her hard. She'd never forget her own worst Christmas, the Christmas her daddy didn't come home. When she stepped back, Carney spoke again. I think it's time, Willow. I think it's time to talk to him, to put you both out of your misery. I want you to promise me, us, that you'll talk to him. Soon. I know, Willow nodded slowly. I will. When? Carney was going to be stubborn, Prue realized, recognizing the way he was digging in his heels over this situation, stepping out of his comfort zone to make the world, Willow's world, a better place, to right the wrongs that he could. And in that moment, something settled into place in Prue's heart, too, like the chambers in a combination lock lining up to let the door fly open. This strong, usually silent man was as steady as the sun, as solid as the earth, as anchored as the Rock of Gibraltar. He didn't want her to change. He never expected more of her than she offered. In fact, even though he used few words to express it, he always made a point to appreciate what she did for him, to acknowledge her efforts, and to make her feel special in little ways. Maybe that's why his tension on the phone this morning had bothered her so much. He was quiet, but not rude. A man of few words, but those few were usually important. Prue watched him with her new awareness, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Carney. Why had she ever doubted his commitment to her? Willow finally spoke. I asked Christian to give me until the holidays. I know I can't face another Christmas with things up in the air like they are now, but I'm not yet ready to face him. I don't have answers for him yet, at least not answers he's willing to accept. If your answer is no, then he should accept that. Carney couldn't tolerate a man who didn't understand the word. It's not that kind of situation, Carney. He wants to talk now, and I'm not ready. That's what I mean when I say no. He's not the kind of guy to force himself on me, but he doesn't like that I've forced him to step back either. That makes me feel better, but he still needs to respect your wishes and give you the time and space you need. Prue nodded in agreement, imagining how Carney would respond if she asked him to leave her alone for a year. She didn't think he'd be too happy either. The walk across the bridge was a little unsettling. Christian sat in his car watching them as they passed by. Carney moved from beside Willow to walk behind her and Prue, all but blocking the man's view of his wife. Prue shot an appreciative glance over her shoulder at Carney. He winked at her and reached up to brush her back with the tips of his fingers. By the time they said goodbye to Willow and returned across the little stream, the silver car was gone. Prue breathed a sigh of relief and leaned into Carney's side. "Thank you for being you," she murmured. His arm draped around her in an uncharacteristic show of affection. He tugged her in closer and kissed the top of her head. "I hope I never do something so terrible that you send me packing for a year. Being away from you for 2 weeks is bad enough." "Oh, Carney, I missed you so much." September Longing. Chapter 6. They walked the rest of the way in silence, but once inside, Carney pulled away and dropped into one corner of the loveseat, his expression contemplative, his gaze on Al's trailer outside the window. Prue puttered around the room, placing the rest of the scones in a plastic bag, the empty coffee cups in the sink, waiting for him to say whatever was on his mind. If Carney had taught her nothing else, it was patience. Finally, he turned to her, a slight scowl on his face. "Would you come sit for a minute, please? We need to talk." "Uh-oh," Prue laughed, but she couldn't remember any other time when Carney had used those words. She was always the one demanding they talk. Her heart beat a little faster, and she took a few slow, deep breaths as she dried her hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven door. By the time she settled into the couch beside Carney, her cheeks were flushed, and she felt uncomfortably close to tears. Surely he wasn't going to break up with her, not after the sweet things he'd said on the way back from Willow's. Carney leaned forward, his forearms on his knees, toying with a beaded coaster from the set on the coffee table. Prue brushed at imaginary fuzz on her black pants. "I need to tell you something." He paused just long enough to make her even more nervous. "I actually went to get my medical card renewed last month. I knew it was coming up due, so I took care of it one day while you were visiting Mumsy in the hospital. But the doctor wouldn't clear me. He was concerned about my blood pressure and the way my heart sounded. I've always had a slight heart murmur ever since I was little, so I was more irritated than worried. When I tried to explain that to him, though, he asked me about other symptoms. I got to thinking that things have been changing. My feet and ankles have started to swell, especially on my long hauls, and I'm more tired than usual. After hearing that, he insisted I get in right away for further testing, but I had that delivery run to make. So I promised I'd go in as soon as I got back. That's what I was doing today." Prue sat stunned, swallowing hard, trying to find her voice. While she'd been keeping Mumsy company in the hospital, Carney had been dealing with the weight of all this on his own. Why didn't he tell her?
"They did an ultrasound of my heart this morning, then a chest x-ray, and finally, they took a ridiculous amount of blood for more testing."
Carney took a deep breath and absent-mindedly put his hand to his chest.
"Basically, I have a bum valve, one of the little gates inside my heart that's supposed to let blood through only one way isn't closing all the way, and the blood is flowing backward, not just forward, making my heart work extra hard to get good blood to my whole body, which is probably why I've been feeling so tired lately, not just because I'm getting old."
"What are you saying, Carney? Don't joke with me. Is this serious?" She struggled to take it all in, to understand what was going on. Are you going to have a heart attack?"
"The thing is, Prue,"
he reached over and laid a beefy hand on hers where they were folded tightly in her lap, but he didn't really answer her question.
"My dad had the same problem. I didn't know until I talked to my sister last week. I thought it was a fluke heart attack, but Judy told me he had valve trouble too. Judy found out when she started looking into our family health history. Her doctor was worried about her heart during her pregnancies. Fortunately, her issues cleared up after each birth. Anyway, they didn't catch Dad's in time, not until his heart had worked so hard it just gave out."
He turned toward her, shifting in his seat until his knee was pressing uncomfortably into her thigh.
"The doctor says it's most likely the same thing, that it's often genetic, but he thinks we caught it early enough to be able to keep me from going the way Dad did."
"Carney, stop talking like that." Now the tears came, sliding down her cheeks and dropping onto their clasped hands. "I don't think I can bear this," she whispered. He sighed heavily and squeezed her hands.
That's what I want to talk to you about."
The way he said it made Prue straighten up, the fear in her belly shifting uncomfortably.
"They're pulling me off the road for a while, maybe indefinitely. I'll need surgery, and depending on what they find in the next few weeks, it could be pretty major."
He took a deep breath.
"They're talking about opening up my heart and either fixing the valve or replacing that part altogether, depending on what the tests show."
She gasped and covered her face with her hands, shaking her head. Carney pushed the coffee table away and slipped off the sofa to kneel in front of her. He reached up and placed both palms against her cheeks, lifting her face toward his.
"Prue, I need you to look at me."
She shook her head, so afraid. She didn't want to hear him tell her he might die. He waited. Finally, she lowered her hands. His expression was gentle, his eyes glistening a little, but he was smiling.
"There you are, doll."
Then he took both her hands in his again.
"Prue, I imagined this so differently. I had such big plans for when the time came. I don't want to wait a minute longer, though, not because I'm sick, but because it's become very clear to me just how important every single day, every single moment, every single heartbeat is with you."
He paused and swallowed loudly, his Adam's apple dipping low.
"I don't know what kind of future I can promise you. In fact, it could get really ugly for a while, but if I know you're waiting for me at the end of the day, I'll fight with everything that's in me to get home to you."
From his back pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box and pried it open with clumsy fingers.
"Prudence Merriweather, will you marry me?"
The white gold ring shimmered beautifully with its square-cut diamond held high on 4 prongs, and Prue could only nod, her voice stuck behind the huge lump that had formed in her throat. Carney took her hand and tenderly, slowly, slid the ring onto her finger. Pink powder rooms and jungle-themed bedrooms no longer mattered the way they did just hours ago. Girly decor and leopard print drapery, it was all superfluous. The ring on her finger was a monument of what was truly important in her life, the rock of a man who knelt on the floor in front of her, offering her everything he had, including his bruised and battered, but still madly beating heart. "Yes, you big stud." The words finally broke loose as she threw her arms around him and buried her face in his neck. "Yes, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Every day, every minute, every heartbeat. I'm yours." We hope you have enjoyed our production of September Longing, Elderberry Croft, Seasons of the Heart, Part 9. Written and narrated by Becky Dowdy. Copyright 2014 by Becky Dowdy. Production copyright 2022 by Becky Dowdy. This is a Brave Hearts Press audio production. Thank you for listening.